Hi, it's Rachel. This is Spiritual Crypto. I'm having trouble recording this, just like I have every session. I'm sorry that I keep repeating that. But I did have an experience the other day that I was reflecting on that's helping, in that I started a meetup group so that people could come to my house to do Vipassana meditation sits. And I had the first one that anyone else had come to was just this past Saturday, a few days ago. And I realized as I was doing it that I could just set up this structure where I was planning to meditate anyway. And the two people that came were such strong meditators that it was just like I got some of their energy. And I ended up doing this sit. It was an hour sit, basically what's called at its on. So like I basically didn't move. And you do that sometimes at the courses. You do it at a certain point at the courses. But I almost never do that at home. And I didn't go into it intending to do it at home. It was just like their energy was so strong and so still that I got support from them just by virtue of the strength of their practice. And then I was able to do it. So it was like, it helped me to understand. It raised my awareness in this seemingly like not super related area. Like I was aware that I'm having trouble talking about seeds and myself or whatever on this podcast because I'm bringing Rachel into it too much. Like not in a, I don't want to be dismissive of whatever Rachel is, this like identity construct that I have in this particular life. But it's the insecurities and unhealed stuff associated with that makes it feel challenging to try and speak generally, and then also to speak about some specific things that seem harder to talk about. And it was just like through this Vipassana experience with these people, I recognized that like, oh, I can just sort of effortlessly do this thing and support can come in that strengthens what I'm able to. I was going to use the word achieve, but I don't like that word because I think it's too strivey and too of not great masculine energy, not healthy masculine energy. But yeah, it was powerful. So I'm hoping to be able to kind of shift my ego to the side more, so that my own insecurities and hesitation isn't sort of like convoluting the message I'm trying to share so much. But at the same time, like I want to have empathy and compassion for the unhealed stuff in me that has created the situation that makes it feel more challenging to speak. I don't know if that's going to resonate with anybody or if that even really makes sense, but it was powerful. It was like the first time I really kind of understood like what that can be like without it seeming like I'm pushing the boulder up the mountain almost entirely by myself, which is mostly what it's been. I've had some lovely people involved at different times for sure, but it's been a lot of me pushing this forward myself. And something that I think it was Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, the startup accelerator. I think he said this in one of his essays. Paul Graham's problematic, I think, in a lot of ways. But there's some stuff in his essay. You could just Google like Paul Graham essays if you're interested. Some of the content is interesting and I found some of it valuable, but he talked about, as I recall, this idea that with a startup, you're like pushing it forward and pushing it forward and pushing it forward for a long time. And then at a certain point, it'll catch and suddenly some other force is pulling it forward and making it expand and making it grow beyond the effort of you as an individual, as a single point of contact. And as I recall in this essay, he talked about how a lot of founders are surprised by how crazy that time can be, how big things can get, how quickly that can happen, especially after years and years of pushing it yourself, and being the main driver of it. And so it's like, I don't know, it's like I kind of got a taste of that in this other way through this Vipassana meetup at my house the other day. So it was helpful, and hopefully I can bring more of that into the podcast too. I don't have trouble with that on a stage. Like I really like speaking to people from stages, and I've done kind of a lot of public speaking at this point. I was thinking about this the other day too, and it's like when I'm on a stage, I can channel it's like I feel like the audience can feel that I love them. That comes through. And so I love doing it. And yeah, there's something more open. It's like I'm safer on a stage or something than I am here, sort of like in a more private setting where it's more like, it's almost like we're talking one to one. I mean, I'm the only one talking, but like if you're listening to this, you're doing it in a private way and it's more like a dialogue between two people or something. On a stage, it's like, it's a different thing. And I can't do it as a performer yet. Like I went to clown school in France and got kicked out and had done comedy stuff for years. And I tried a little bit of stand-up. I love comedy, but it's like, there's another layer to translate things through that I don't understand how to do yet. If I were a musician or something, I think a lot of musicians can channel through more easily because maybe they don't have to use language and deal with all the stupid limitations in language, which is another thing I'm frustrated about lately. But I don't know. I was thinking about that again recently. On a stage, there's kind of the adrenaline rush, but if I'm speaking about seeds or something or about ideas I'm interested in relating to crypto in the future and stuff, like very similar to what I'm doing in this podcast, but in a more structured, less navel-gazy way, I guess. It's easier. It's like a lot easier. Yeah. Why is that? Maybe I'm accessing more supportive energy when I do that in that format. I suppose that's what it is. Yeah. Because when you can feel a bunch of people, sometimes, it can even be hundreds of people. I've spoken to crowds of many hundreds of people before. And if you're getting that energy of their support, it's such a boon. It's like such a wonderful thing. And I'm sure like if you're a performer and you're like bringing down the house. So I've had a couple shows where like I really got people to laugh, or like one time I got like a brief standing ovation in clown school. And it is, it's like the funnest feeling in the world. It feels wonderful. And it feels good for everybody there that's a part of it too. So that's another thing. But, I wasn't expecting to start talking about performing or something. What I wanted to, like sort of the overarching theme of this conversation today, monologue today, it was, I wanted to talk about the future, like the next 10 years. I came across this graph yesterday, which I'd seen before, and it was showing internet adoption from the mid-90s through 2014. And it showed that in 1995, 14% of the U.S. population was using the internet. 14% in 1995. And I came across this other article that was published in April of 2021 about crypto, which said that 14% of the U.S. I believe was the U.S. population, has traded crypto. So that I find that very interesting. So in that it's showing that today, like 2021 is analogous. 2021 for crypto is analogous to where we were at in 1995 in terms of internet adoption. So it's still really fucking early in the crypto space. And I think the next 10 years are going to be really interesting. And that graph in particular showed that, so it was within 5 years, I believe, by 2000, almost half of the U.S. population was using the internet. And I'm going to make a blog post as well and actually I'll show the graph and link to the article for anybody who's interested. And if you don't know where our blog is, you can check it out at seedsgives.com/blog. So that'll be there. But yeah, so like within 5 years, it was 50% adoption, nearly 50% adoption as I recall. And then within 10 years, it was at about 2/3 adoption. I think it was precisely 66%. So, it's trippy to think about, but 10 years from now, it's going to be almost 2032, which sounds futuristic as fuck to me. And by that time, 2/3 of the population in the country where I live could be trading crypto. So it's been reassuring to me, I think, to think about that to some extent. Like, the data is interesting and thinking about adoption and stuff is interesting to me, but it's much more interesting to me to think about where we're headed spiritually and where we're evolving societally. And I'm reminded of, there's this guy, Lee Harris, whose stuff I've listened to. He's a channeler. I stopped listening to him years ago now because I found his narcissism triggering, because I have all this unhealed stuff about growing up around a narcissist and dating narcissists, because that was what was familiar and stuff. So I stopped listening to him. And it was also kind of interesting, I realized too, in that I listened to him for a long time, fully aware of how triggered I was by the narcissism, but I thought I couldn't get the information that he was offering anywhere else. So I thought I had to subject myself to that energy. And I think that's very much something that capitalism does to us. Like, there's so much narcissism baked into capitalism, so much. It's someone I was talking to recently described it as a sociopathic system, and it is in so many ways. And I think because we live within that system and we go to school conditioned in our entire lives with the thought that we're going to have to be a part of that system to survive, to get our needs met, to have a quote unquote successful life, whatever the fuck that means. So it's like we're used to thinking we have to deal with sociopathic energy, and that even extended into this like weird sort of niche spiritual content I was consuming, until I kind of woke up and realized that I could access that information through myself as well, which I think is like a big lesson that we're all learning now as we're moving more into feminine energy. The answers are within us. We can access them through ourselves if we're just creating a space to do that, stepping away from that system enough to be able to hear that in that inner voice, or whatever you want to call it. So that even showed up with this Lee Harris thing, but I bring him up now because, as I recall, he talked about, this is a recording I listened to prior to 2020. He talked about the years 2020 to 2030 having to do with the rise of the feminine on Earth, that energetic balance being restored between yin and yang, instead of just so fucking skewed toward yang, like we've been dealing with for a really long time, in terms of like humanity has been dealing with for a really long time, in terms of what we have in us energetically, individually, and then therefore in the systems we create. So 2020 to 2030, right? And I find it really interesting then that COVID happened early in 2020, because as difficult as that's been for so many of us, and, you know, like all the horrors of that, there are encouraging signs of progress, I think, that have happened as a result of that. And a lot of it had to do, I think, with kind of forcing us to be in the feminine more. Like, if we were lucky enough to have a building that was safe, that we could stay in during COVID times, we were in that being energy more, that idea of the divine feminine being the being energy and the divine masculine being the doing energy. We had to be more in the being. And when you're in that energy, then your unhealed shit can come up on the surface so that you can deal with it. When you're striving and running and whatever, you know, trying to stay 2 steps ahead of it, you can avoid dealing with it for lifetimes. So he talked about 2020 to 2030. And then, I was thinking too about Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, who I love because I think his energy, he was just like, he was channeling from a higher place. And the album Pet Sounds in particular, I really like Pet Sounds. And there's nothing like it. Like, I can't think of another artist who I felt was channeling something of such a high vibration. Maybe some filmmakers have kind of touched that, but I can't think of any specifics off the top of my head. And like, in contrast, you know, like, as I understand it, like the Beatles album Rubber Soul influenced Pet Sounds. Like, Brian listened to Rubber Soul and he was like, I want to try and make something like that. And then Pet Sounds influenced Sgt. Pepper. But if you listen to fucking Rubber Soul, man, like, you know, it's like lyrics, like, it's like Lennon talking about how he used to beat his wife and keep her apart from the things that she loved. And then he's like, man, I was mean, but I'm changing my scene. Like, it's like such a flip, weird line. And then that, like, Brian's whole thing is like channeling from this like beautiful higher place where even, I mean, the lyrics as well are just so much more loving and beautiful and stuff. There was nothing fucking like that, man. But I think like Brian just didn't have support around him. It was just Brian. It wasn't like there was Lennon and McCartney. he just didn't have support, and he had this like, he was in a difficult situation. And I feel this like, I love him. Like I saw him perform in this cool outdoor theater in Santa Barbara a few years ago. And like, as soon as I saw him, I just started crying and crying. And it was just because it's his energy, man. Like, I feel like he's like a higher level being or something that came down and has done a good job. So I feel proud of him. Like, he's as sensitive as he is and was, he's still around, and he outlasted things. And I mean, he did a lot of drugs and whatever, but I think so many sensitive people who don't have other coping mechanisms that are healthier, other ways to deal with how dense it is on Earth, a lot of them end up doing drugs or using food or whatever. And I think that ended up like clogging up his receptors or something, so that he wasn't able to kind of receive that energy in the same way that he could through pet sounds. After that, I think he never touched that in the same way again. But he's still kicking it, you know. He still tours. Yeah, and he met his partner, the person that really helped him out and took good care of him, like way later, like midlife. I mean, I know that she was like 48 when they got married, and so I think he was in his 50s. So I think that's cool. He like had this challenging time for a long time, and then, you know, met the person that was really going to help him out, and then had more support around him. But yeah, I just bring that up because there was a reason, which was that I remember listening to this interview he'd done, and he was talking about how he'd seen sort of like visions of the future, and he saw that we were moving toward heaven. He used the word heaven. And there's also this Dr. Brian Weiss, who I believe he was like Yale and Columbia educated and is an MD, and stumbled into doing past life regressions when a patient he was treating ended up talking about her past lives, like in the 80s unexpectedly. And then he's written several books about his work with past lives and about how resistant he was to even talk about what he was seeing relating to past lives, because he thought the scientific community would just think he was crazy and dismiss him and whatever. And it's just more of that misofem thing, I think. Like, our understanding of the rational is so limited, and I understand how we've gotten to that, but like, we needed to go to the rational because bad masculine energy in the name of organized religion used to do really fucked up things in the name of religion, and still sometimes does today. So we had to go to like the provable, the like concrete 3D provable rational to evolve past that. But I think we're at a stage now where it's time to keep moving. We need to get past that type of understanding of the rational, that sort of limited understanding of the rational. So as that relates to crypto and whatever, I mean, I think I felt like looking to the future now, because I've been feeling so frustrated lately with how fucking just like gross and broy, and it's just like so much of crypto is just replicating what's shitty about the old capitalistic system. And seeds, it's like seeds has either not been heard of, or we get lumped in with crypto generally. And then, so I'll run into people who are like really horrified by capitalistic systems, but because they know that seeds is a cryptocurrency, they'll be hesitant to engage with it. It's also because it's so early, right? Like 1995 for the internet, like when things are early, they all get lumped into a single category. There isn't enough sort of understanding of the thing yet to have that sort of sophisticated, more nuanced conception of the distinctions between the thing and other things in that category. So it's just like, that's the stage we're at right now. And I think I've been most frustrated to see just like dumb, broy, bullshitty, scammy, hypey energy get a lot of visibility. Whereas what I'm trying to share about is more complex, and it's the cryptocurrency piece is a part of this larger evolution that I see, that I think society needs to go through. And, you know, like Seeds is about supporting us through that transition into this healthier balance of masculine and feminine energy to get us to this like heaven that, the reason I mentioned Brian Weiss, is that something that came up. I read 2 or 3 of his books or something. And in one of the books, he talks about how a person he was treating who was like in a trance state during doing a past life regression, talked about how in 100 to 200 years, like we're going to get to heaven on earth. It's going to become a much more peaceful, just like more evolved society. And I feel that too. I feel that we're moving toward that. This idea of 5D resonates with me. And I think getting out of zero-sum, scarcity-centric, capitalistic structures is so integral to moving society into that healthier place so we can evolve to that, that higher way of being. Because when you're trapped in that structure, when you're trapped in a job you don't like, when it's always been that way, when you've always had to work jobs that you didn't really resonate with or whatever, in order to have a place to live and enough food to eat, you can't be thinking about all the shit you have to heal. You can't be thinking, you don't have the space. You don't have the luxury of that. And so Seeds is trying to help us. It's trying to provide that space so that people can redeem a seed to ask for help, to get the money that they need. Like the dream of Seeds in 10 years, is like, Seeds today, like the largest gift we granted to somebody who redeemed a single seed to ask for help was for $50,000, which was a big fucking deal for us. That's a big thing. So in that instance, that person redeemed a single seed and it was worth $50,000 to them. And there's something that's interesting, I think, about this idea of setting the value of a unit of the currency yourself. Like when you redeem a seed, you say, I want $1,000 to pay my rent or whatever it is. And then if our community fulfills your request, we'll send you that $1,000. And therefore that seed you redeemed plus some amount of time, it's probably not going to be instantaneous. It certainly isn't instantaneous now, but maybe in the future it will be really fast to get a request fulfilled. In that instance, that seed was worth $1,000 to you, right? There's something about that that's on trend with this sort of like personalization and individualization. I think we're getting away from the sort of cookie cutter structure that we've been stuck in, which is of the hierarchical old order, assembly line, industrial era way of thinking, where you're like a cog in a machine or something. We're moving into this greater sense of individualization. And so Seeds, I think, is part of that. Our money system needs to be part of that. And we're also shifting into this healthier, feminine, giving, nourishing, being type of state societally. I think it's hard to see right now, but I think more of us that are stepping away from the conventional system are then kind of more readily able to glimpse it because we're not distracted by all the stuff that's so unhealthy and damaging in that old system. So I think, in 10 years would be the equivalent of like 2005 for the internet, right? Like what was going on in 2005, like Facebook was already out there. MySpace had been around for years, whatever. There was already a lot going on the internet in 2005, right? So when I get bummed out about how fucking gross and bro-y and stupid so much of the conversation around cryptocurrency is right now, and how frustrating it is that that's a turnoff for many of the people that I want Seeds to reach, that would really, I think, feel relieved to know that Seeds exist and would benefit from Seeds. I'm thinking about the future. I'm thinking about a time at which Seeds is recognized for what it is and how different it is from any other fucking thing out there. There's nothing else out there like Seeds that I've come across in the crypto space or outside of it. And that's a challenge always too, if your thing is new, if it's novel in certain ways, if it's sort of very different from what's we're so used to zero-sum capitalism that it's hard to understand that when you give to help someone in need, we'll send you seeds and thanks. And you can get a gift from Seeds with no strings attached. People are like, what? It just seems so unbelievable because of the structure that we've been trapped in, that we've been conditioned to have this limited conception of what's possible in a money system, and Seeds is something else. And so, yeah, when a thing is new like that, it always takes some time for people to get what it is when it's not derivative there's always that sort of time frame before it's recognized. And I think it can happen very quickly once it is recognized. I'm reminded of Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, is problematic in a lot of ways, but he has these essays you could Google if you want. You could just Google like Paul Graham essays. And there are some nuggets of wisdom in many of those that I found valuable. And in one, as I recall, he's talking about this idea of how like when you're a startup founder, you're pushing your thing forward and forever. You just keep pushing it forward and pushing it forward. And it seems like, you're doing that for a really long time. And it seems like if you're not pushing it forward, it's not going to move forward. Like it's your thing. It's your responsibility to do that. But when startups start to take off, and this can apply for other like things that are not startups as well, right? But he said that there's a moment where suddenly forces outside of you will start pulling your startup and will make it really, really grow without you having to be the driver of that, without you having to continue pushing. And as I recall, Paul Graham says that's often, startup founders are often really surprised to see how big and how fast and how powerful that shift can be when it finally happens. So, Seeds isn't there yet, but I think we're going to get there. And so, if you're listening to this now, you're so early to the crypto sector. You're so early to what Seeds is doing. So my hope is that you'll see enormous benefits, and hopefully you've seen benefits already. And if you ever feel like I feel and are grossed out or just bummed out or frustrated or just feel, I've been feeling kind of defeated in looking at what's going on in crypto and capitalism. Just know that what I can see, I feel it in my bones. As sad as I get about the current state of things, so much progress has been made through Seeds already. Progress that I would have been hard for me to believe was going to happen even a couple years ago. And I can feel intuitively that we're moving into this better space where there's more room for expansiveness, and you can redeem a seed to get the funds you need to make the art that you want to make, and you won't have to work a job that you hate, and you won't have to worry about survival. We'll be able to shift from scarcity-based, fear-based ways of thinking into an abundance mindset, which is a lot more feminine. We'll be able to do what we love and feel taken care of and create from that place. Like, I think perhaps the biggest waste of our time is just this waste of humanity, because so many of us are forced to fit ourselves into an economic system doing work that isn't what we're truly here to be doing, that isn't the right thing, that like the thing that we came to Earth to uniquely offer to like our fellow humans. And so my hope is that with Seeds, you'll have the support you need, the resourcing you need around you, regardless of how fucking rich your family is or whatever bullshit like that the old system like traps us in. Regardless of generational wealth, you'll have access to this thing that can get you the resourcing you need so that you have the support that you need to be in an abundance frame of mind and therefore create the thing you're uniquely meant to create. That's the dream of Seeds, and that's what I think we're moving into. And I think all this stupid, gross crypto noise from like the lower energy, dumb, masculine bullshit is going to fall away. And I'm trying to remind myself of that now as I'm saying it, so that I'm, supported by that idea when I feel discouraged by what I see in this space. So if you're ever there, if you're ever in that energy, I hope that thought could maybe be, helpful to you too. I really appreciate you listening. And I'll end it right here. Thank you so much. Bye.